Welcome back to Yang Daily. Tons of stuff to get through and not a lot of it good. Sorry about that. Best to get started and yank that band aid off, but we do have a good piece of news to begin with. Income Movement has launched a new website. At incomemovement.com, you can check out everything they're involved in and sign up with the movement. In their politics tab, you can find all the congressional candidates they are officially endorsing, of which there are currently 10. It's a great resource to visit and bookmark. Speaking of UBI, here's something shocking. Brazil apparently passed a UBI into law in 2005, but it was never implemented because the president refused to do so. That is blowing my mind right now. Apparently, it's being considered during the crisis. How they are still not sure, and how the presidents have survived their people is also baffling to me. How about stop watching people suffer and die and just stamp the dang bill? A recent survey of 2,000 people in the UK found that approval for UBI is now up to 84% there. I'd love to see a survey in the US as well so we can mail it into Congress every day. With the overwhelming evidence from cash transfer trials all over the globe consistently showing that UBI would improve nearly every aspect of human life and that all fears around it are unfounded, the only question should be why we didn't do it decades ago and how much pointless suffering has there been as a result. As Yang says, the best time to plant a tree is 10 years ago, but the second best time is now. On that note, Mike Breuer, UBI caucus opposition to Mitch McConnell, is 5 days out from his FEC filing deadline where the amount of money raised will be announced, and he is pushing for a last sprint of $25,000 in donations. If you want bills to actually be voted on, then you want Mitch out of Congress. If you want that, and can spare a few bucks to make it happen, follow the link below. Scott wrote a great article based on examining human civilization from the eyes of an alien, a technique passed on from the likes of Richard Feynman to put things in perspective. It does that quite well and makes fairly clear the absurdity of how we fail each other. It's a good read. Find it below. Scott has also started collecting stories from people applying for government assistance since the crisis. If you've had to apply for unemployment, welfare, or anything else from the government in the past weeks, please share your experience with him on the Twitter thread below. You can also scroll through the thread if you want myriad examples of how welfare systems fail us. There's everything from being denied due to lack of a state ID, which can't be acquired now because those offices are closed, to being denied due to having left the job voluntarily in order to avoid getting people sick, to being technically employed but not receiving pay. The number of corner cases that deny people help are everlasting. I think the most galling, apart from the systems being completely inactive right now so that people can't apply at all, is that they are still requiring people to submit weekly proof of job searching during this crisis. Seriously. The welfare system is a bad joke and it needs to go. For that matter, so does this Phase 3 bill. Some provisions did make their way into the final bill to attempt to prevent corporations from firing employees if they take federal bailout money. Congress, in their eternal wisdom, figured preventing layoffs until September 30th would suffice. Can you guess what happened? Yeah. United Airlines just announced they'll be laying off a ton of people after September 30th. Shocker. I'm sure none of the money will find its way into CEOs' pockets either. Continuing the slew of bad news, COVID's infection rate in the US has been found to be among the highest in the world due to our government's monumental mishandling of the pandemic. While most countries' cases are doubling around every 5 days, which is terrifying enough, cases in the US are doubling every 2 to 3 days. It's expected to peak in about 3 weeks. At that rate, 3 weeks would have around 26 million people infected. Though the rate will surely vary and reduce when approaching the peak. That's what creates the peak after all. It also wouldn't be the last peak, as there are almost certain to be resurgences of infection over the coming year, particularly if people follow Trump's advice to try and get everything back to normal. If you want to really terrify yourself about COVID, click the link below, which has a render of the spread of people from a single Floridian beach following spring break using GPS tracking of cell phones. The people from that one beach traveled over most of the US in just a couple weeks. The people who are ignoring social distancing are literally going to be the death of us. It's also rather concerning that people can be tracked so easily with modern technology, depending on how much you value privacy. Want to be more disgusted? The first teen known to die in the US from COVID died as a result of being refused care at an urgent clinic due to lack of health insurance. He was redirected to a hospital where patients cannot be turned away, but died en route. Every single American should be ashamed to live in a country where this can happen, and more importantly, should be doing everything they can to fix it. An economy collapsing due to tying basic income to employment, people dying due to tying health to employment. It's almost enough to make you think that Yang guy may have been right. Yet another issue arising from the pandemic: abuse. Domestic abuse has been observed to increase during economic crises, shooting up 65% in 2008. This shouldn't be a surprise, as people being more stressed doesn't tend to make them less hostile. This time is going to be worse, as people are not only going to be stressed financially, but also afraid and stuck in quarantine together and with emergency services overloaded. All of this sets the perfect scene for abusers. A children's hospital in Texas has already seen a third as many abuse-related deaths in the last week as they normally see in a year. Please do what you can to keep in contact with your neighbors and make sure things are kosher. I probably should say this more often, but everything that goes into these episodes and much, much more appears on my Twitter page. I basically sort through a ton of other news sources and collect everything that seems relevant and important. Much gets filtered out before making it to the podcast, such as the deluge of articles coming out in support of UBI on a daily basis, due to there simply being far too many of them to address. Other stuff might be funny or good, but just not imperative or new. Point being, if you ever want more information than the podcast, @YangDailyCast is a great place to get it. Also be aware that these episodes get mirrored on the Yang Daily YouTube channel if you prefer to listen there for whatever reason. I know this has been an endless parade of bad news, so let's have something humorous, albeit still tragically so. Scott is also running a thread to collect submissions for retelling of classic disaster movies in an alternate timeline where our Congress was developing the solutions to the disaster. He began with an asteroid headed to Earth to wipe out all life. I figured that one would go something like, Congress begins by giving money to the banks because they're too big to fail. Then they order the construction of giant domes, which will never finish in time, to protect only the portions of the population they deem worthy. Then they head into a mountain bunker with all of the provisions, because they deserve a rest. Scott is using the hashtag #CongressAMovie. Add yours to the pile below. I think we all could use some humor after the mess of bad news, even if dark humor is the best we can do right now. Lastly, some truly good news. Yang has announced Humanity Forward will be sponsoring a Creative Arts Expo competition with small cash prizes for visual artists, photographers, writers, comedians, musicians, filmmakers, and so on. While you're stuck at home is a great time to put that nervous energy into your masterpiece and show it to the world. Who knows, you might even make a bit of scratch off it. Sharing our imaginative talents and our human side might be just what we need about now. And that'll do it for today's Yang Daily. Get your taxes filed pronto so you can get your $1,200. Check out Income Movement's new website. Consider helping Mike with his donation goal. Read Scott's enlightening alien article on the absurdity of money and property. Contribute to Scott's Government Assistance Experience thread and/or his #CongressAMovie thread. Check in with your neighbors. Get your creative juices flowing. Join the daily Income Movement conference calls and catch missed episodes on their YouTube channel. Sign all the petitions. Volunteer or donate on the Humanity Forward Relief site. Consult HF, the Income Movement Aid Database, or United Way if you need help. Message Trump, Pelosi, McConnell, Graham, Dean, and Schumer why true UBI stimulus is the best solution. Use ResistBot or Income Movement to easily contact your representatives. And don't forget to Yang Daily.